and then
I
have
think
like an outro.
This is probably better than the first one, man.
Yeah, I feel a bit more coherent, and I had to express myself a little bit more clearly, you know, because I do feel like last time I was a bit all over the place,
I think it was fine. I think it's just you being harsh on yourself. And like,
I just didn't want to make it seem like I'm like some hateful like Nazi bigot, like or something like that. Like I'm the new Hitler and I'm gonna come for like the or something.
Yeah.
Like that's not me.
No.
I recognize the reality of the situation. Like we live in a society where there's a certain group of people who hold the levers of power, and it's a big disadvantage, a big problem for us because they hate us. I recognize there's strong social problems, there's a strong lack of morality, and I want to do something about it. I feel like you have to preface all your message with that because you'll say,
for now,
we're practicing love speech and we love people, and then you'll say something which people think is hateful because love is hate in modern society. Love is hate, and hate is love, and liberty is slavery.
Yeah, that's the word, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's the inversion. So you say something that's loving, people will think you're hateful, and you'll say things that are clearly hateful, and people will think you're loving. You know, like you'll say. I mean, there's any number of examples that you could take from modern society.
Love,
exactly. Yeah, and it's
allow
clearly
things like negative.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like if you let someone degenerate and destroy themselves, that's not because you love them. That's because you hate them. You know, like if you see an alcoholic struggle with alcohol, if you hate them, you'll just leave them alone.
Yep.
You'll let them destroy themselves.
Yep.
That's what's happening to society. Society is destroying itself, and everyone is saying, we need our freedom, leave us alone. That's because they hate us, not because they love us. Yeah. Do you have questions set out, or do you just want to...
I don't really have questions. If you wanted to talk about anything like first...
I mean, not really, man.
Then that would be like...
You're interviewing me, so...
Yeah, true. Alright, so basically, the other day I was watching fucking Louis Theroux's documentary on Nick Fuentes. And like the whole ethos of the documentary is just like, not bashing that political ideology, but like portraying it in a weird light. So, I would say, in response to that documentary, that there's a high contingent of people that have negative associations with the whole Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
Just like
you can call it that. Yeah.
Would you say you align with that, or you have a different?
Well, I'm not American, so
that line of thinking.
Oh, definitely, 100%. I'm not an American, so I definitely couldn't say I'm part of America First or any movement like that. But the thing is, like, if you're not American, I think by default you can't really be a part of that movement because it is American nationalism. But the overarching ethos, which is Christian nationalism, that's something that every country in the West can get behind because, I mean, majority of the Western countries were Christian up until, you know, like basically the French Revolution, like 300 years ago-ish. So, like, Christian nationalism, I mean, even this country, Australia, which is relatively new, still speaking like that, it was a Christian country when it was founded from the Terra Nullius principle. It's technically still a Christian monarchy because we're under the dominion of the now King Charles. Was it Charles V, I think?
Charles.
I don't even know.
Charles the Driller.
Yeah. But we're technically under his rule, so Australia is technically a Christian monarchy. Like, that's technically the system of government we have. We don't have a president. It's not a true democracy. We have a prime minister. We have ministers. So, like, but obviously, in effect, it's not really a monarchy. The king doesn't really do anything. He's more of a ceremonial figure. It's more of like an emperor figure for like Eastern countries, like there was in China up until the Communist Revolution, like there is in Japan now. But in effect, it's more of a liberal democracy where the prime minister actually does have almost full executive power. He is at the top of the government.
Yeah.
So, but the Christian nationalist ethos is one that I think the entire West should return to because it's something that fundamentally the most important distinction is that it promotes morality. That's the thing. When you look at liberalism, which is the doctrine that we live in since liberalism became installed after the French Revolution, after the American Revolution, there's no more morality in society. That's really the fundamental problem. It's probably something that I should have mentioned last time during our interview as like the starting point, because that's really the crux of the issue, is that when you live in a liberal society, basically what you're saying is that every individual is equal, right? They have an inherent and equal value in the eyes of the law, and so in in the eyes of the law, and basically in the eyes of the government and in the eyes of society, every individual has inherent equal value, and so they should be free to make any choice they want with their life, and there's no objective good, there's no objective bad. I mean, I think everybody with any sense knows that that's just not true. So
yeah, but like the way that I'm kind of the question I'm asking basically is like after watching a documentary like that and the way that they portray. Sorry.
I don't want to go too off track. If you want to talk about documentary, that's fine. I can talk about that or like the reaction to it. Yeah.
I'm leading up to like build up to the question that if there's a high contingent of people that don't necessarily align with your the way that you look at the world, how do you implement? Like I believe that most of the things that you like, or the tenets that you hold, or the ideology that you prefer holds, are beneficial for society. If we're talking about a society that wants to grow and build. But one, I don't think that's what people generally really care about anymore, even if they need that kind of, even if that's what they need. And two, if you're to come up to them and say that your liberal ideologies or the way that they're programmed to think or they do think are wrong, that I feel like there's a kind of friction there.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So how do you like overcome that? Because when I'm watching the Nick Fuentes documentary by Louis Theroux, it's like, not that they're out to get him, but they're portraying him in a light that's like
he's unappealing.
Yeah.
He's like unappealing. He's
like
off
on the fringe of
yeah.
Like,
he's off-putting. He's like a weirdo. He's like way out there.
Yeah.
Like his ideology is extreme or it's too radical, and it's like too detached from like the normal.
Right. And when we talked last time, I didn't really know much about Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that he was Kanye's political. And even then I didn't know
He
much.
was for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I watched his documentary. And I'm like, true. Okay, I know a little bit more about him. They're like portraying him as like some guy in his mum's basement.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely one of the things they have to do, because in reality, this has always been the case. But the people who have the most power to change things are people who have nothing to lose, and are people who are fully dedicated to the cause. And most of the time, it's people who are willing to go against the grain. And so those will always be men. Like women will never go against the grain. And so to destroy those people, what's important to do because of our modern social context is to put them all the way down the social ladder. Is to say, well, you're a loser, you're socially incompetent, you live in your mom's basement, you're a leash, you're unemployed, like all this shit, because it's to push people down. Yeah. Because we live in a society that's it's funny because it's supposed to be liberal, but it's very hierarchical. The social hierarchy is always present, and it's very, it's enforced very strongly. But so to get back to that point, yeah, they have to depict him as totally unappealing, as totally, like a social reject, as like this person who's way out there, like this crazy dude. But the thing is, the doctrines that are proposed by a Christian nationalist program are really not that out there. Like it's much closer to people's hearts than they think. Yeah. And the thing is, as well, to answer that question, how do you deal with like, not having mass popular appeal and stuff? Like I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe in democracy. So like what people think is, I mean, I hate to say this because again, this sounds detached. This sounds like totally out there, but it's just irrelevant. Like people, in my view, people do not know what they want and they don't even know what they need. They fundamentally are people who are possessed by expediency. They want to do things that are in front of them. They want to do things in the now. I mean, look at our generation, the ADHD generation, the Zoomers. Like, bro, we can't even fucking sit down and watch a movie for an hour and a half. You know what I mean? Can't even read a book. Can't even. So it's like, how are you going to ask those people what they want to do with their lives, with the society that they're in? It's ridiculous, in my opinion. Yeah. And on top of that, I just straight up don't believe in democracy. I think democracy is bullshit. So asking people what they want, for me, is just irrelevant. I don't care.
Yeah. I'm not talking about it in terms of like, in order to be a leader, people must respect you.
100%.
In order for people to respect you, they must admire you in some way. So it's like, if you're being portrayed in this negative light in mainstream legacy media, like it alienates that whole ideology, because it looks like, and it is just like incel men who live in their mum's basement.
Yeah, real. It is.
So it's like,
well, look, I want to,
like, how do you get behind that as somebody that wants this message to be delivered still, but you don't want to you don't want to be alienated or like, yeah.
Well, the thing is that it's a very difficult spot because, again, because we live in a liberal democracy, any idea that opposes liberal democracy is going to be rejected. It's going to be pushed out there and seen as totally, like, it's kind of the same thing with the left. Like, obviously, we're on the right. We're considered on the very far extreme fringe right, but people on the very extreme fringe left are the same. Like these communists, these like anarchists, these people who don't want a system of government or who want like total, you know, communism.
Yeah.
These people are depicted in the same way, right?
Yeah.
It's because the system has to maintain itself. So in order to do so, it has to push everything up to the fringes that's not exactly in the middle with itself, liberalism. So it's true. But the mass popular appeal is, why I say it's inevitable is because if you look at modern society, there's more and more young men who are totally without a cause. They're totally detached from society. They're totally abandoned by society. They have no cause, they have no success, they have no vision, they have no dreams, they have no ambition. They're sort of left to their own devices, and that's why, like, and on top of that, it's not even like these men are the object of societal pity. Like people say, look at these young men, they're struggling. They're making fun of them. They're saying, well, these guys are fucking losers. Like push them down, you know, push them down while they're already down, kick them. So it's like, when you have that kind of cast, and it's only growing, by the way, like the number of like, you know, incels or basement dwellers or whatever, or like, you know, video game nerds. I know it sounds funny, right? I want to talk about incels in a minute because it is funny. Yeah. It's the evolution of it's fascinating, but that sort of person, the young man who is totally, you know, he's doubled over. He's totally, he's isolated. He's atomized in reality. He's abandoned by everything in society. That number is only growing. It's growing more and more because, I mean, we truly do live in a gynocracy. We live in a society that's centered around the feminine. You know, the feminine is what sort of englobes the society and what sort of, you know, directs its flows and stuff like that. So young men who don't have the capacity or the will to feminize themselves, to emasculate themselves, they're totally abandoned by society. No one gives a fuck about them, right? Yeah. I mean, why do you think movies like Joker come out, or there's all these Sigma memes online, like fucking Ryan Gosling, fucking, you know, Taxi Driver, Literally Me, Patrick Bateman. Like, why do we think these characters are so popular? It's because if you watch those movies, those characters are unabashedly themselves. They express their masculinity, whether it's toxic or not. It happens to be toxic in most of these, right? They're violent, they're murderers, psychopaths, whatever. But they're not afraid to be themselves. They're unabashedly masculine. They go out there and, they do horrible things, but they don't care. They're not there thinking, what are my parents going to think? What are these people going to think? What are women going to think? They're just doing their thing. Yeah. And it's liberating. Young men look at that and they're like, holy shit, that's me. I want to be like that. I want to go out there and do my thing and do what's right. Do what I want to do. Not necessarily go out there and like kill women and like, you know, chainsaw prostitutes or whatever.
Well, that's what they think. That's like the main perception that I'm getting from, you know, the mainstream as of right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like they have to constantly put these people down. I mean, even like the Giga Chad meme, that's another incarnation of that. I mean, it's ridiculous because it's so extreme. But the Giga Chad meme is like that. It's like this extremely masculine figure who's like, you know, he's used as a prop to put forward these like incel values. It's just hilarious, like the contradiction. But of course, the mainstream media has to paint this movement as your losers, your incel basement dwellers, like virgin, kissless, like loser nerds, whatever, because they have to strip you of your social status because they understand exactly what you said, which is you have to be respected, you have to be admired. Exactly. And so they take away everything that could make you a respectable individual. Right. Like they will never go out there and say, oh, well, you know, you might be an incel, but you have good morals. They will never say that, even if it's the case. Because that would make you respectable. That would make you someone that people can look up to. That can make you someone that people can follow and actually be inspired by. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah. That's the thing, man, because like with the incel thing particularly, it's like it's almost like your societal or your social value is predicated upon, or even just your value in general is predicated upon your ability to reproduce, which makes sense biologically because that's like the end goal.
It's not even the ability to reproduce, it's the ability to actually get women.
Have access.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, look, bro, like I understand that most men nowadays, we have nothing left, dude. Like, we don't have war. We're not going to go out there and like kill, you know, opposing factions. We don't hunt our own food. We're not going to go out there and like, you know, throw a javelin through like an antelope's heart and then eat it. You know what I mean? They're like, seriously, this is what people used to do though. I know it sounds funny, but like they used to do that. We don't explore the world anymore. Like we've discovered the entire world. We've been in space. Like what's there left to do for us? The only thing left to conquer is our other half, is the feminine, right?
Yeah. Desires, man.
It's the feminine, and so that's why most men nowadays, they resign themselves to this endless conquest of the feminine, to this endless like it's like this like autistic, like trying to chart out women, like this whole red pill thing is so cringe. You saw the video I made on it, right? Did you see it?
Yeah.
It's like this whole, it's like this autistic mathematical breakdown of women. It's like the game, and when she says this, that means this, you're gonna do this. It's like, bro, it's not that fucking deep, all right? Like, it really isn't. So the whole incel thing for me is, it's so red pilled because it's a rejection of all of that. It's saying, look, there's more important things in life than trying to conquer women. There's more important things in life than getting laid or getting pussy or whatever. All of that shit is not actually that important. It is important in the future because you want to have children, right?
Yeah.
That's what fulfills you as a person, man or woman, I think. But in the meantime, there's more important things to do. Like, we can't spend our time trying to chart out this unknown mysterious force, or trying to get pleasure, live like a hedon, live like a sybaritic lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, the whole incel thing to me, I mean, when it started, it was definitely about pathetic dudes who literally, they couldn't even get laid.
Yeah.
So they're out there saying, oh, well, it's because I'm short, it's because I'm this, I'm that. Like, that's all past now. The people who call themselves incels nowadays, it's no longer those people. In my view, in my experience, what I'm seeing now is that the people who call themselves incels today, like, unironically, they call themselves incels, like, no joke, is people who wholesale reject the feminine. They reject the gynocracy, they reject the game, they reject the red pill, they reject the sexual, the feminine, all of that. And they say, we have something more important to accomplish. Whether that's their own thing or whether they're part of a movement, like a Christian nationalist movement, like any sort of local political movement, those are the people I see calling themselves, like, unironical incels.
Yeah.
So and that's in part due to the mainstream media shaping that notion.
Yeah.
Because they say, oh, well, this political activist, he's an incel. It's like, it made no fucking sense at the time, but then we've just, like, sort of appropriated this term and said, okay, well, fuck it, yeah, we are incels. Now what? Because you know about this, like, when you get bullied, the only thing you can do is say, yeah, and, like, if you fight back, it's just gonna get worse, right? It's like, no, I'm not an incel, bro, I swear I can get laid. It's like, I don't have anything to prove to these people. Yeah. We don't have anything to prove to these people. So yeah, sure, we're incels, yeah, we're misogynists, yeah, we're sexist, yeah, we're this, we're that, we're everything else. Because when you adopt that label, it just takes away all its power. That's the real secret.
Yeah, but then people get, like, triggered with the little fear response.
They 100% do, yeah.
The associations. That's the part where it's like, it's very difficult to supersede the political name calling, for lack of a better term.
It is, yeah. It's slander.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it's the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
It's been used since the French Revolution. It's back in the French Revolution, they actually coined a term for it, which translated to English, which was l'infamie, infamous. That's where the word comes from.
Got it.
Yeah, it's just pure slander. It's libel when it's done on print media, but yeah, they just lie about you, and then, like, you, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you have to justify it to everyone when you're, like, you have those type of beliefs, and obviously that's, or you would agree that it's purposefully done to make it more difficult.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, ideologies like this to pervade, which eventually 100%. They probably will, in the scope
it's
of
inevitable,
time, right?
They will prevail.
Yeah.
If they don't, society will just collapse.
Exactly,
and then it will just rise up again with those values, because they're the only values actually capable of creating something.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, that was just the main sentiment I had while I was watching this thing, and my girlfriend's just sitting to the left of me, just like hating on it, like she just fucking is not having a bar of it.
Yeah.
And, like, they're just painted as, like, misogynistic, sexist, like
based.
Yeah, well, and it's not though, because you don't want to be like if you're trying to be a leader, a good leader, you want to be virtuous, and you want to be
100%.
You know what I mean? You don't want to have those.
Call it benevolent sexism.
Benevolent sexism. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right.
Call it benevolent misogyny.
Yeah. Fair enough. But, yeah, like, I just can't be arsed with that shit anymore. Like, and I don't really know what to do, like, because it just seems like everyone's like, I guess that everyone has the same, or everyone's just told to say the same thing, so they just repeat it. Yeah. But it's like almost like you're screaming this message into an abyss at points, and it's very hard to overcome those emotional
connotations. Yeah, labels
and responses that you get.
It is, yeah. Well, this is something that Adolf Hitler said that's very prevalent today. He said, "I reserve emotions for the masses, but reason for the few." So obviously, the way you control the mass of people, the population, it's not with an intellectual argument, because everybody is at a different level of intelligence, right? So if you say something stupid, it's not going to appeal to intelligent people, something basic. Right. If you say something highly intellectual stupid people aren't going to get it. The one thing we all do feel is a range of emotions. And so what you do to manipulate a population, to really brainwash them, is you send out these emotional messages, these emotional beats. This is what I talked about in one of my videos when I said that modern empathy is totally corrupt. It's that because we live in a gynocracy, because we live in a very feminized society, what is the one emotion that women feel very strongly? It's empathy, right? It's born of this feminine insecurity in reality. It's empathy. And so they use that empathy at every turn. I mean, how did they get us involved in the Ukraine war, for example?
I don't know.
Think of the poor Ukrainians. Think of the poor women and children who are being slain by horrible dictator Putin, right? It's always this empathy. It's always, look at these victims. I mean, look at the entire society around us, the Marxist doctrines. We recently in Australian politics, we need a voice to parliament for the Aboriginals. Why? Because Aboriginals had their land stolen and they're poor victims of the white man. And it's always this empathy that's being used. It's always, look at this victim, look at this poor person, they're being overwhelmed, they're being crushed. Yeah. You need to identify with them and you need to help the marginalized. It's always emotion. It's always emotion, emotion, emotion. So obviously, when they're trying to destroy an ideology and slander an ideology, they have to bring in terms that arouse an emotional response in people, specifically women. Yeah. And so incel is the perfect term for that. Yeah. I mean, incel wasn't even a fucking word until in the mainstream until 2016, 2017. Yeah.
But even then, man, that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that you have people that probably you don't want to align with, identifying with things like nationalism. So you've got neo-Nazis or whatever, and obviously the second someone sees that or
obviously
protest,
the Nazi thing is an instant. It's an instant. Yeah.
And the thing is I assume that humanity is mature enough to when you say something that Adolf Hitler said, not say that you hold the ideology for every one of your beliefs, but you're taking a value out of something that is has value, and then using it to adding it to your arsenal. And
yeah,
I feel
exactly.
It's just not. They don't recognize that.
No, of course not. Well, no, because it's again, what you're putting forward is an intellectual position. It's a ration-based position. It's not an emotional. The emotional is very simple because the reason why an emotional argument is very simplistic is because you have to condensate something to what it makes you feel. Yeah. So there's no complex, nuanced intellectualism behind it that says, well, this part had benefits, this part was bad, this part could be used, that could be transformed, used, forgotten. Exactly. That's an intellectual thing. Yeah. The emotional is we have to compress something down and distill it into what it makes me feel. So when I say Adolf Hitler, what does it make people feel? It makes people feel terrified. It makes people feel, repelled, because they're well, he was evil. He's the manifestation of evil. He's the most evil person to ever exist. And obviously there's reasons why we think that, but that's the emotional response. And so when they say, well, you're a Nazi, you're a neo-Nazi, it's well, you're now associated with, Satan himself, the worst person that could possibly exist is Adolf Hitler, is Joseph Goebbels, is Himmler, it's all these people. So that's why it's so good.
There's also people that are related to that ideology that are involved in it.
100% there are.
It's kind of I do want to get behind it, but then I just see that, and I'm just
100% there are. Yeah. There 100% are. I mean, look, even within the far right, there's a lot of factionalism. I mean, I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic. That's the number one thing. That's the most important thing, is God, is Jesus. It's not skin color, it's not race, it's not sex, It's not nationality. It's Jesus. That's the number one and always will be, because I'm Christian, right? That's why it's Christian nationalism. That's why there's actually a lot of people within the far-right movement, their number one is skin color, right? Those are the people we call white supremacists, neo-Nazis. Yeah. We don't like those people. No one likes them. They're idiots, right? They're stupid. Yeah. Because one, their ideology is impractical. Two, it doesn't build anything. It only destroys, because it only segregates and separates. And three, there's actually no clear demarcation even within their own, I want to say sect, of what is and isn't white. You know what I mean? So they'll say, for example, Italians and Portuguese, Spaniards are not white. And it's well, they're whiter than 99% of the world, right? So within themselves, they're also split. You've got people who think that Ben Franklin was right and uniquely the Anglo-Saxon people are white. Yeah. You got people who think that other eugenicists were right. You got people who think, so those people are, that's just stupid. It's not universalist. It's segregationist, and it's also impractical and doesn't build anything. And so like even within the far right, there's a lot of factions like that. You know what I mean? There's nationalists who are, well, my country is the number one. It's not Jesus, it's not skin color. It's Australia's number one.
Yeah.
So, you know, the part that I vibe with, that I like, is the Jesus number one position.
Okay. Awesome.
Because in my opinion, from that, you get everything else.
Yeah.
I made a video on that as well.
Yeah,
but,
100%. Yeah. That's the thing, because that's why I like having discussions and like aerating it basically, because you almost have to like walk through this minefield of I'm this but I'm not that, I'm that but I'm not this.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
it's just like maybe that's just the pathway you have to follow. That's like
It is.
the what's it called? Jesus has like the narrow walk.
The straight and narrow. Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't even matter, because if you talk to someone who's intellectually honest and engages with you honestly, with authenticity, they'll easily recognize that that's where you're coming from. But if you're talking with someone who is emotionally driven and who, you know, hates the product of your thoughts, it doesn't matter how many times you justify yourself to them or explain to them what you are and aren't. They'll just say that you are that, right? It's just a lie. Again, it's that slander. It's that it's that libel constantly. So
So I guess
it doesn't
part of
matter.
it's just like emotionally detaching from
100%.
people's opinions.
At some point, you just have to stop caring what people think. No conqueror, no person who ever achieved something of value, of note, was, you know, they went to bed at night and they thought, I wonder what my friends think. I wonder what this random person down the street thinks. You know what I mean? At some point, you just have to stop caring. You just have to go, look, I have my convictions. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. Regardless of what other people think, I have to stand up. I have to do what I think is right, regardless of the cost, even regardless of the personal sacrifice. Even if I have to give up my life for this, that is more important than my existence, this cause. So, you know, it's and that's why they say we're extremists, because we have that kind of conviction. We have that kind of dedication to the cause. It's important.
Yeah, true. France, bro.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, look, bro. I mean, fuck. It's bad. I made a couple of videos on this already, but it's.
I have to like put it in auto translate and like try.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should put subtitles on there or.
Nah, you make a second French channel, just like purely French.
I don't know, man, because it's already hard enough to grow one channel. It's already hard enough. Hey, I've got some French fans on the channel, man.
Yeah, no, I get you, but like, it's just in terms of algorithm, like YouTube wise, it's just like.
It's hard enough to grow one channel.
Too many eggs, too many baskets, you know?
Yeah. But the thing, the situation there is I mean, it's dire, dude. We saw what happened. So I don't know if you were caught up with the situation, but basically some scum of the earth was like, you know, doing some scummy shit in like the slums of Paris, you know, illegally driving a car that didn't belong to him. He had already been arrested several times. And then he tries to run over the cops who were like pulling him over. So they shot him, and then because he was driving, they killed him.
True.
And then it was basically what happened with George Floyd, right? It's like a accidental police brutality. He was 17, yeah.
But he was brown?
Yeah, he was a Muslim immigrant, yeah. From Algeria, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's killed, and then it's the same reaction as the George Floyd riots. It's all these like fat, dysgenic, like terrible liberal white people coming out saying justice for this person. It's like, mate, you're not even part of this community. This doesn't affect you in any way. Totally brainwashed. And but the thing is that was interesting, that was different from the United States, is that Macron actually deployed 45,000 police officers after 3 days of rioting and stopped all the rioting. Whereas in the US, the riots went on for months. The George Floyd riots in 2020, they went on for months. They did like millions of dollars of damage. So, but in France, it stopped after 3 days.
Yeah, I saw this video about how there was some sort of insurance fraud with the destruction of those specific areas during riots in 2020. And how some guy like looked at all this shit and he was like, this is not a coincidence.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either. I mean, anytime the elite can make a buck off a social happening, it happens. So, you know, anytime they can make money off of it, it happens.
Because they're engineering it, man.
Yeah, well, they are actually. Yeah, they are. Who's bringing them into the country?
Yeah.
Sure shit is not the French people. Yeah. It's not the American people that are sitting there saying, yeah, we want more immigrants, we want more blacks, we want more Mexicans.
If you ask the average person, they'll probably wouldn't be against immigration, you know?
Well, that depends where, man. Like in France, they do polls about this all the time. Vast majority of French people are against immigration.
Yeah, French are low-key like based as hell.
Yeah,
Just don't put up with any bullshit, which is fine.
I mean, in Australia, it's not really a tenable position, bro. Without immigration, Australia would die out. Like,
Yeah.
people are not having children here, so
Yeah. So like in the scope of our kind of bubbles, when someone like Nick Fuentes or whatever, just anyone on that, anyone says, yeah, I'm against immigration, you just kind of like, it looks silly.
yeah.
'Cause it's like,
In Australia, I mean,
like okay, as a Christian,
Mm.
are you for immigration or no?
no,
No, because you want to keep your population.
yes, homogenous, yes,
Homogeneous,
yeah,
yeah,
uniform, racially uniform, yeah.
Yeah, but then isn't that putting race right up next to God?
Well, that's the interesting thing is there was a big debate on Twitter about this, because it is a genuine question when you ask it in good faith. The thing is that I've explained this in one of my videos as well. Is it's from God, in my opinion. If you have God at the top, every other element to holding a stable society actually is downstream from that. And for me, racial homogeneity, racial unity is a part of a functional society.
Yeah.
A racially heterogeneous society.
Sorry.
Yeah. A racially heterogeneous society can actually not survive. It doesn't survive. Multiculturalism just doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's never been a society, and I'm making a video about this.
Can you like define doesn't work?
So when I say multiculturalism, what I really mean is multi-geneticism, because culture is actually more than just skin deep. It's actually part of your genes.
Got it.
Your culture is a part of your genetic code,
Yep.
and so it can't be changed. There's no changing that because it's part of your brain, it's part of
from
your
years of
entire body.
evolution.
Exactly, correct. So multi-geneticism does not work. It cannot work in a society. A society that contains several different sets of genes and haplogroups and all that kind of stuff that manifest themselves as different cultures, different cultural ways of living and lifestyles. That kind of society is actually bound to fail because there's no unity. There's no uniform identity. What happens to those places is that they just split apart. Like, let's say you have a city, all the people in the north are one ethnicity or culture, west, east, south, they're all different. At some point, they're just going to split into 4 cities that are just those ethnicities because people want to live among their own. Like, they want to hear their language being spoken outside. They want to eat their cultural food. They want to wear the clothes that they traditionally wear.
Yep.
That's just what people want to do.
Yep.
There's no melding of that, and there's no creating like this blank slate culture that everybody can adopt. That just doesn't exist. That's what America's trying to do. When they're exporting like homosexuality and like anal sex and all this stuff to the East, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create like this humanist culture. It's like human rights and free sex and all this and that. Consumerism, right? That's the human culture. It doesn't work. People reject it. They say, we don't want that. We want to stick to our traditional culture. That's why they get booted out of the Middle East all the time. That's why they get booted out of China. That's why they get booted out of everywhere. That's not the West.
Interesting. Yeah.
So multi-geneticism for me it's a non-possibility. It's an impossibility. It cannot work. It's people who have different sets of genes simply cannot function. And the fact that what you brought up, what happened in France, that's just an example of that.
Yeah.
Why is it that every single one of those people are all the same race? They're all from the same place, and they all don't fit in.
And you think about just like racial tension in general, it kind of proves you right.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. Like, why is it that, like, for example, blacks in the US, they have their own community? Why can't they meld in? They've been in the US for 400 years.
Yeah.
If that's not enough to assimilate, then how long? 4,000 years? Like, that's not a thing. They're genetically different.
Interesting.
And another interesting point is that the human genome obviously is very broad and that contains all your genetics, but 50%, half of your genome, of your unique genetic material is contained within your brain alone. 50%. So that means that obviously your skin color, the way your organs operate, the density of your bones, your muscles, the shape of your skull, of your face, the texture of your hair, the color of your eyes, all of that is contained within 50% of your genes. And the other 50% is within your brain alone.
Yeah.
So how much would that change your personality, your perception of life, your perception of like morality, for example? It's massive. It's hard to understate how important that distinction is. That's why there's no such thing as assimilation. That's why there's no such thing as multiculturalism. It cannot occur. And yeah, racial tension is a very easy example to grab it to prove that. You're exactly correct. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Because you don't really, I don't really think about any of this stuff because you just are kind of taught your whole life that, be kind or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the message fucking is. I'm not saying I'm against it per se, but it's like,
No, kindness is great.
kindness is very good. But like, it's almost like you need to kind of like just sit there and think for a second for for the actual image to come through clearly. It's like, yeah, why are we trying and failing when there could be other ways that we could operate societally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a much broader question. I mean,
Yeah. I feel like it's some sort of like, it's a sort of utopianism.
Yeah,
that we're just
100%.
trying to put like in terms of racial,
100%.
like just racial utopianism that we're trying to push towards and strive for. That's not working really.
No.
Because it's kind of the same problem that you have with the emotional maturity and intellect of people, where it's like only a certain percentage of the population can actually look at and analyze their emotional reaction to things
True.
as an observer, and then act in a way that's according to whatever their ideology is. So it's like almost like it's almost. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
the same token of like,
Yeah, it is.
it's pushing shit up a hill. Basically.
You're right. Yeah. Well, it is, and it's a fruitless endeavor. And the thing is that the goal is not. It's not possible to get there, and it's also not worth getting there, even if it was possible. And for some reason, the only people in the entire world who seem to have this notion of a racial utopia are white people. Isn't that strange? You'll never go to an African country and they'll go, we love white people so much. We want white people to come into our country and be equal to us and have all the same rights as us. That will never happen in a billion years. You will never go to China and they'll say, we just love black people, we love white people. That'll never happen. For some reason, white people are the only people who seem to be pushing forward this sort of like racial utopia, equality. And the reason why that's happening is actually because it's not white people who want that. It's the people who run white society, and they aren't white.
Do you